Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Curt Dose, call sign Dozo. I'm honored that you invited me here to speak to you. My father was a Navy fighter pilot, so I was destined for the Navy and pilot training from an early age. I loved airplanes growing up, and I loved the Navy. But how do you develop a good fighter pilot? Navy flight training is excellent, from basic training, jets, instruments, formation, gunnery, bombing, and carrier qualification. I steadily acquired the tools I would soon need. I fought being plowed back. I thought I would be the only JG in the Navy without Vietnam experience. But the best way to learn is to teach, so it was good for me. And a year later, I made it to the F-4 Phantom training. 2 months later, I was on a Continental 707 to Da Nang as a VF-92 replacement pilot. I'm standing on the transient line. The Air Force MPs take off my handcuffs and hand me over to the USS America's C-1A COD pilot. But that's another story. The COD delivered me to USS America on Dixie Station, 11 September 1970, and that's where this story starts. I'll focus on 2 fighter missions, my first combat mission and one of my last, both into North Vietnam with sections of F-4s, but 20 months and 191 combat missions apart, the first and the last. After landing on America, I was escorted to the VF-92 ready room. The duty officer took my orders and then took me to meet the skipper, lounging in his flight gear in the back of the ready room. He asked me how I felt. Great. Was I ready to fly? Yes, sir. Good. We're short of pilots, and you'll brief in 2 hours. You'll be on my wing for an RA-5C photo escort into North Vietnam. He introduced me to my Rio, Jack Wood, and several other pilots and Rios there. They welcomed me to the war. Jack took me to our stateroom where I changed into a flight suit, then to the paraloft to draw combat supplies. An hour later, I was back in the ready room for the flight briefing by the Vigilante pilot and the skipper. I was a confident, fully trained Navy F-4 pilot. I had 1,300 hours, 70 in the Phantom where I had learned dogfighting, missile firing, and carrier qualifications. I had studied the F-4 TAC manual for recommended tactics against AAA, SAMs, and MiGs. Our F-4s were loaded for the mission, with 4 Sidewinders and 4 Sparrows. Now it was time to use these skills. Jack led me to the airplane and introduced me to the plane captain. I pre-flighted and climbed in. It was the same Phantom that I had trained in at Miramar. I started both engines and tested aircraft systems as trained. We were fully operational. The Vigilante banged off Cat 4, then the skipper, just like my Carqual training, except all the airplanes were loaded with missiles and bombs, and we would be killing people, and they would try to kill us back. But I believed we were stopping communism here. I still believe we did. Then it was my turn, and I soon launched, just like I had trained. I joined on the skipper's wing, and we flew to the Ka-6 tanker orbiting over the ship to top off our tanks. No problem. I had done this once before at Miramar. The Vigi has large internal fuel tanks and didn't need more fuel. The Vigilante picked us up off the tanker, and we headed southwest, through South Vietnam, then north into Laos. We entered North Vietnam from the west through Magia Pass, descending to 3,000 feet and 500 plus knots. I made notes on my kneeboard card for roads and trucks I saw. I was surprised by the rapidly developing low clouds in the target area. The ride was rough as the F-4 got jolted around by the clear air turbulence. I was disappointed that the skipper had to tell me to brake left to maintain position. I made more notes on my kneeboard in the target area, flying with my left hand. It was a beautiful day with excellent visibility, except for those developing low clouds that sometimes obstructed my view of the Vigi or the skipper. After the photo pass, we flew northeast and exited around Bankarai Pass. I was surprised when the Vigilante gave me the lead to check me over. I figured that that's what you do after combat. He said I appeared undamaged. I gave the skipper the lead and checked him over. He was okay too. This had been an uneventful first mission. After America's next launch, the landing area was clear. So we maneuvered into the break. My formation flying was perfect. Maybe even a bit too close as I tucked in with overlap on the skipper's wing. He kissed me off and broke. I followed. The Vigi and the skipper landed, and it was my turn. Good interval. OK-3, perfect ending for a great mission. We disarmed, parked, shut down, and rushed down to IOIC so I could share my notes. The Vigi pilot and his BN were debriefing when we got there, so I just stood behind listening. They reported heavy opposition in the target area, with the target partially obscured by heavily AAA 23mm, 37mm, 85mm, and 100mm guns firing away, and the 2 SAMs were launched and guided on Kite 2, but he defeated them with a brake turn. Yikes, I was Kite 2. I looked at Jack to make sure this was our Vigi pilot. He nodded yes and whispered that my jinking had been excellent. I asked him if we had warnings, and he said we had APR 25 and 27 strobes and all the launch and track tones. I never heard or saw a thing. They gave me an NCM for my brilliant defenses. 3 months later, we were back at Miramar, where I met my future wife and attended Top Gun. After 9 months at home and a full shore workup, including dogfight training against A-4s, T-38s, F-8s, and F-106s, we're back aboard ship. This time USS Constellation pulling out of San Diego. We won't be back for 11 months. I'm now the weapons training officer for VF-92 and have 1,600 hours, 400 in the Phantom, not counting the 4 to 8 hours each day and night that fighter pilots sit in the Alert 5 cockpit, ready to launch in under 5 minutes if a threat or unknown approaches the ship. Navy fighter squadrons trained for MiG engagements. We studied the strengths and weaknesses of each MiG type, from the maneuverable MiG-17 to the potent MiG-19 to the fast and agile MiG-21. We knew their gun sight settling times, blind spots, missile and gun capabilities, and tactics. The North Vietnamese MiGs liked to engage the green Phantoms. They didn't like to fight the gray Phantoms. I was invited twice by the U.S. Air Force to fly to Da Nang and brief their F-4C squadrons on Navy tactics against MiGs. The squadron DO met me at the airplane and told me, "We both fly the same airplane, but we are bomber pilots, not fighter pilots. We don't know how to handle these MiGs when they attack." So it's time for your next combat mission into North Vietnam. Let's see what you've learned since the first photo escort mission when you got lucky and didn't die. It's 10 May 1972, the first day of Operation Linebacker. Constellation is on Yankee Station, with Coral Sea and Kitty Hawk. Midway and Saratoga are nearby. Constellation will launch the first Alpha strike of the day, a strike where all up aircraft will be launched, strike the target, then recover. They are all refueled and rearmed, then a different aircrew who have been briefing during the first strike man and launch the second Alpha strike, and in the same way the third. About 40 airplanes will attack a petroleum storage farm south of Haiphong Harbor. Our mission is to be a MiG cap for the strike. We've been in heavy combat now for 7 months, 191 combat missions. We know the target area, the SAM sites, the AAA locations, the MiG airfields, and the SAR procedures. The F-4J is like a spouse. You've been in the cockpit for thousands of hours and know every control and switch by feel. You have become one with the airplane, the skilled connection between the stick, throttles, and rudder pedals. The fighters refuel, then join up. Then, circling over Constellation, the strike group forms up and heads for the target. You are cocked and ready, confident in yourself, your Rio, and your fellow pilots. You've all done this many times before. As you cross the beach into North Vietnam, the first SAMs streak up to reach you. A-7s fire Shrike missiles to silence the SAM radars, and F-4s peel off to deliver rockeye onto the SAM sites. You follow the action automatically. You see every missile and gun strobe, hear every tone. You're jinking softly as you maintain position in the formation, spotting landmarks for navigation. If a SAM is on you, you fire chaff and maneuver to defeat it, then rejoin your position. My flight lead was Austin Hawkins, with Jay Tinker as his Rio in the back seat. My Rio is Jim McDivitt, call sign Root Slip. We fly together as a section for virtually every combat flight. As the strike group approaches the target, Hawk and I turn north to position ourselves between the strike and the likely MiG threat axis. Nasty 100mm AAA bursts force us further north. As we orbit and maneuver, our Rios sweep their radars looking for bandits. The strike group attacks and exits toward the coast. The radio suddenly comes alive. This is Red Crown on guard. Bandits, bandits, blue bandits, bullseye 040 at 40, Angels low, Red Crown out. This means MiG-21s. North Vietnam's newest and most dangerous fighter, 40 miles northeast of Hanoi, which means their major MiG airfield at Kep. Hawk immediately called "Kites have the vector," then dumped the nose, accelerating and descending below radio contact so we can't be recalled. Our section had long planned that if we ever had a chance to go MiG shopping at Kep, we would go. We knew where it was and what was there. The air over Kep was clear of airplanes, but I spotted 2 MiG-21s holding short of the runway. My Rio Jim calls on the radio, 2 MiGs on the roll. Being closer, I call, "Kite 2 has the lead, burner now, in place port, going down." The two Phantoms make a steep descending turn to the runway. The fast descent causes the air conditioning to fill my cockpit with fog. We're flying blind at 50 feet, 650 knots, with a Sidewinder growling in my ear. I dump the cabin pressurization. I call that I will take the right-hand MiG, Hawk work on the left. The MiGs lift off, drop their centerline fuel tanks, then brake hard left at extremely low altitude. We follow at 50 feet, 600 knots, 5 to 7 Gs, lagging to fly to the optimum AIM-9 Sidewinder launch position. I'm raising my wing to go over the taller trees. Finally, in a perfect launch position, I call Kite 2, Fox 2, right-hand bandit, and squeeze the trigger on the stick. After about an hour, the Sidewinder streaks off and immediately turns hard left towards the center of the fight because of the MiG's high G. But a moment later, it comes flying back into the fight, flew behind the MiG, and detonated into a hill. I immediately pull from lag pursuit back on target and fire another Sidewinder. It flew the same path, hard left inside the circle, then back towards the MiG, but this time at the last second turned left and flew up the MiG's tailpipe. Then a large orange fireball and two burning MiG halves come tumbling out the front and slam into the ground. Hawk fired on the lead MiG, but again the fuse could not handle the high G turn and missed. I pulled for tone and fired my third Sidewinder, but it misfired. I didn't know that at the time because I thought one of Hawk's Sidewinders going by was mine. Unfortunately, our Sidewinder also failed to make the last big turn and missed. Approaching min range, I pulled and fired my last Sidewinder. Unfortunately, it again got close, but failed to bring down the MiG. We had to get the MiG to reduce his Gs. Due to the extreme low tail chase, Rio Jim had been unable to achieve a radar lock, but I decided to shoot a Sparrow missile across his nose to get the MiG to reverse in front of Hawk, who still had 2 or 3 Sidewinders left. To get the correct launch angle for the ballistic shot, I pulled up and rolled right into a barrel roll attack. As I passed inverted, I looked behind us and saw 2 more MiG-21s attacking from our 5 o'clock. I called 2 bandits 5 o'clock level, break right. We broke hard right and flew through MiG-3 and 4. Getting low on fuel, Hawk retook the lead and called for a bug out. We tapped min burner and accelerated to Mach 1.2, feeling comfy because we knew that MiG-21s couldn't fly supersonic below 5,000 feet because of control problems. Well, no one told that to the MiG pilot that came sailing up behind us. My Rio Jim called bandits behind Kite 1. I called cross turn now, just as the MiG fired an ATOL. The missile guided towards Hawk, but couldn't hold on to the Gs and detonated under his Phantom, knocking out his radio. I turned hard to engage, but Jim reminded me that we were out of Sidewinders, so I turned back to rejoin Hawk and exit. North Vietnam debriefs revealed that this fight was 7 MiG-21s versus our 2 Phantoms, but we never saw the other 3 MiGs, a scary thing. They claimed a Phantom shot down. That's not true. A month later, we finally went home. I was proud when my dad pinned on my Silver Star medal during a televised award ceremony. So what have we learned? On our first photo escort mission, we learned that good jinking helps avoid AAA, timely brake turns defeat SAMs, nugget pilots need good flight leads, and good luck can be as important as skill. How about the lessons from our MiG-kill Alpha strike? Only experience creates Rambo pilots. Study your adversary's weapons and tactics. Keep continuous watch for new threats. Dogfight missiles need high G fusing. And good luck can be as important as skill. It's been my pleasure to talk with you, and I will now open the floor for questions.